You can keep running, but eventually your wounds will catch up with you. You can try to escape with various forms of spirituality, ascension and transcendence, trying to stay as the witness, remain as the observer. And that can give you a lot of spaciousness, can give you a lot of room to breathe. But it doesn't resolve the subconscious programs that are running in the background of your experience. Because a lot of what we believe to be ourself and hold so dearly to us, those things that you say, oh, that's just who I am, are really just our various coping mechanisms for our wounds that we carry from childhood. So I have always been an achiever, someone that tries to prove my worth to myself and to other people through success. When I was in school, from primary school all the way up to current day, I'd always try my best to know all the answers and do all my homework, produce the best work. And I then discovered the gym and building my body up to try and make myself feel better about myself, because inwardly I felt as though I wasn't enough. And then discovering all of the so-called intellectual books, the areas of philosophy, to try and make myself feel as though I knew more than other people. Going into spirituality and this desire to transcend, because life as it is wasn't enough. There had to be more. And in some ways, there is more. There is always more to life than what we can perceive. But it can be very hard to distinguish between searching for truth and becoming hooked on searching and always trying to find some fulfillment just around the next corner. And I've heard those teachings many times in non-dual circles, that if you believe that happiness is in the next moment or anywhere other than here, then you are in delusion. And there is some truth in that. I think there is absolute truth in that. But where these teachings sometimes fall short is that there can be absolute truth in many things. So there can be absolute truth in the sense that happiness can be nowhere other than here. But there's also truth in that happiness can also be deepened by doing certain work on yourself. And a lot of non-dual circles would say, well, you don't exist as a person, and to do any work on yourself as a person would negate the truth of your non-existence. And that is a real tricky bind to get out of. Because what do you do if you realize that you're not a person and yet you're still suffering, and you believe that the only way to be free from suffering is to know fully that you're not a person. So it negates a whole dimension of work on yourself. The whole field of emotionality, personal relations, and unconscious wounds is bypassed as a means to avoid the unsatisfactoriness of our life. There's a lot of truth in that. When you look at animals, they are naturally happy. They can feel different emotions, but they are, as a baseline, very content. They don't question their reality, most likely because they don't have the faculties to do so. So they're in a complete state of ignorance, and they say ignorance is bliss. And I think there's a lot of value in allowing yourself to be ignorant. And really, it takes a fair amount of wisdom to allow yourself to be ignorant. It is our wounds and our sense of not being good enough that always tells us that we must be more. We must be wiser, more compassionate, more loving, more forgiving. And yet there is wisdom in not forgiving, taking a step away, being foolish, being stupid. And if we can't find the wisdom in that, then we're screwed. Because it is the only way that we learn, through our mistakes, through our lack of compassion, our lack of forgiveness. And we can't force the condition of the saint upon ourselves. We can't tell ourselves to be saintly and get there by doing that. It doesn't work. So we have to accept that we've got all our baggage, that we're human, and that we don't really know what's going on, that we're confused. I think it was Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche who said that one of the most clear signs of enlightenment is confusion. And I think, what a beautiful way to put it, because this life is utter paradox. As soon as you say, this is how it is, you have missed the mark. And by missing the mark, that means sin. Sin just means to miss the mark. And as soon as you think, this is how it is, this is what it's about, you've missed the mark. But if you can play around with concepts, perspectives, visions, dreams, doubts, if you can take it all lightly in your heart, then there's a lot of freedom in that. To be light enough that the world carries you in its wind, and it takes you to where you need to go. And fundamentally what is required for that is a lack of resistance. But how do we build a lack of resistance? It can only be through faith. We have to come to trust reality. And reality over time, if we are open, will prove to us that it can be trusted. But ultimately, there will always be doubt unless we take the plunge into the abyss of the unknown. And so that is our responsibility in this life. We're not here for certainty. It would be a boring life if it was a certain one. And so we have to embrace the unknown, the mystery, and cultivate curiosity. Because as soon as curiosity ends, we are dead. We are dead because we've become mechanical. We become a program run on repeat. And life itself, this life, these trees, these hands, this body, is not just merely a machine. It has intelligent design far beyond human comprehension. But it is not just a machine, because it is not linear. It cannot be predicted in its entirety. Just like the weather, we can predict what the weather will be like next week, maybe in 2 weeks, maybe in a month or in a year, but we cannot predict what the weather will be like in 10 years. Because there are too many variables at play. And the biggest variable is the mystery. And the mystery is always the spanner in the machine. It's the spanner in the works. And it's a variable that can never be accounted for. So you can never say that you know what's going on, that you know what's happening. And if you ever think that you do, be humble enough to sit with yourself and ask if you know what will happen in the next moment. And if you can sit with that, you will always be humbled. And you'll see that you're not in control. You're not in the driver's seat. You're a passenger. And the thing is, we want to be in the driver's seat. A lot of us don't want to be the passenger. We don't want to feel like we're just watching life. But it goes far enough that you are the driver and you are the passenger. You are the director and the actor. And the stage and the audience. All at once. And you can dip into any of those roles at any point, but you are never limited by any of those roles. It's the ability to play a role without being bound by it that is essential for liberation. And I'm not speaking from a liberated place. On one level, I have my suffering and my baggage and my wounds and my difficulties and my challenges. But there is a place in me and in all of us that if you're quiet enough, you will know that you are free. And your ability to know that place is reflected by your ability to be that place. And so we oscillate, everyone does, without knowing it a lot of the time, between freedom and being bound. Because the state of freedom is very simple. It doesn't need any effort on the part of the person for it to be there. And yet, if we just take that as the end statement, and we say that freedom is effortless, we miss the mark. Because we have so many programs in us. And this body and this mind that we are blessed with can never be in a state of perfection, but it can always be in a state of understanding and coming into alignment with its true nature. And that can be a bumpy ride. We don't necessarily wake up to who we are, and then our life becomes bliss. It's actually the opposite, really. Because all of the unconscious material in us is no longer being pushed down. Because we're not, as a person, suppressing it anymore. So the only thing it can do is come up. Because we're becoming lighter, more spacious. So there's more room for this material to come up and be processed. And if we try to avoid that and say that there's nobody home to have any wounds, then we'll just live out our suffering until we're ready to face that we have wounds, that we have suffering. And it calls us back to be human, really, is what I've found. It shows us that we're in this life, your life, that you are experiencing right now. You are there for a reason. A very special reason. And I don't know what that is. I'm just figuring out mine. I only know little traces of mine, let alone yours. But your life has an immense value. It's a throwaway to just say that you are consciousness and that consciousness is one with everything, and therefore there is no value to the personal life because it is all a play of divine consciousness. That is a spiritual bypass for a lot of people. Because your soul has incarnated into this body and mind because consciousness wants to know something about itself through you. And the only way it can understand an aspect or manifestation of itself is through the life that you are living. So if you think, what would consciousness want to know about itself? What experience would it want to create? And then say, well, what if that's the life I'm meant to live? And there's infinite possibilities for that life. And what I've found is that your traumas, your wounds that you carry are and will be your biggest difficulties in life. And the more aware you become of them, they can be more challenging because you're trying to work through them. But as you do begin to process them and heal, they will reveal themselves to be your superpower. They will show themselves to be the gift of your soul to itself. It is the gift that consciousness bestows to itself through the vehicle of trauma in order to create a certain type of individual in this universe. That's how far it goes out for me. And who knows how further it goes. I'm just speaking my truth. And so I'm very fascinated by the different planes of reality and how we really have to be trying to live on all of them at once, which is something that Ram Dass used to say that I love. Because I have many people in my life, some of the past, some of the present, some of the future, who knows who they are, but they're there. And we all get caught on different planes. I was caught on the spiritual plane and, the metaphysical and the astral for a long time, for many years. Hung up on transcending, going beyond. And now there's a simplicity and a richness in the trees and the birds and the bees and the grass. In just my ordinary little life. What a story. I mean, it's incredible. Difficult, challenging, wonderful, splendid, full of blood, sweat and tears and ecstasy and the laundry. It's more than we could ever really ask for. And we get it for free. We get it for free. This breath, the sun, it's just given on a plate to you. And we have the audacity to go and say how much my life sucks. I mean, I play that narrative sometimes. Oh, my life, oh me, oh life. How could God do this to me? And it's all just part of the melodrama. It's all part of your narrative on the stage. And it's really fun when you can dive deep into it. And not feel as though you have to be witnessing it from a soul level. You can be it completely. It's almost like you're established enough in yourself that you kind of forget about enlightenment. It doesn't really matter anymore. Because it's what's always there. That dimensional aspect of reality is always there. It's your home. There's nowhere else that could be your home. But as you feel comfortable there, you're willing to take adventures into realms unknown because you know that you can never truly be lost. And I'm saying this from a place of mentally feeling quite lost right now. But there's this faith that all will be well. I can't explain that faith. I can't write it down why it's the case. Can't give a mathematical formula why that would be so. Because the faith comes from the mystery. And somehow I'm living and breathing, talking, relating, dreaming, eating, pissing, shitting, and doing it all. And I have no idea how any of it happens. So, who am I to doubt for a moment, fundamentally, that it's not all taken care of? And you have to have gratitude for that. You have to have gratitude. Because life will just slip by like that. Thanks for listening. See you in the next one.